The late August sun was beating down on the cracked asphalt of a forgotten Texas backroad when Officer Marissa Cole pulled her patrol car into the prison parking lot. The heat shimmered off the hood like a mirage, and the air outside the vehicle felt like stepping into an oven. She killed the engine, sat for a moment, and watched the brown brick building loom ahead of her. Marissa had been with the Austin Police Department for nearly 8 years, but this was different. Today, she wasn't coming as a patrol cop, breaking up bar fights or writing up accident reports. Today, she had been specifically requested that by a prisoner on death row. She'd thought it was a mistake. When the warden called, Cole. Warden Davis had said over the phone, his voice gravelly, carrying the weight of someone who'd worked 30 years in a place where hope went to die. Inmate Lucas Kane put in his last request. Strange one, too. He asked for you. Her. Out of all the cops in Texas, all the people Kane could have named, he picked her. She had never forgotten his name. Lucas Kane had been convicted of a double homicide almost 12 years ago. A liquor store robbery gone wrong. 2 dead, an elderly clerk and a college kid who'd just been at the wrong place at the wrong time. The trial had been all over the news. He was 19 then, barely old enough to buy a beer, but the jury hadn't hesitated. Guilty, death penalty. Back then, Marissa was still a rookie in uniform, walking beats, dreaming of making detective someday. She hadn't been part of his case, hadn't cuffed him, hadn't even testified. But she had crossed paths with him once years ago, and that moment stuck with her like a shadow she couldn't shake. And now, the man was about to die. And he wanted her there. She opened the door and stepped out, her boots crunching on gravel. The smell of dry dust mixed with faint traces of exhaust. Somewhere in the distance, cicadas droned like an endless warning siren. The guard at the front gate nodded as she approached. Officer Cole? Yeah, warden's expecting you. They buzzed her through, and the heavy steel door clanged shut behind her. Every time she entered a prison, it felt like the world outside slipped further away, like crossing into a realm where time didn't move the same. The walls were too high, the air too still. Inside, the warden himself met her. Davis was tall, silver-haired, with eyes that had seen too much but gave nothing away. Officer Cole, he said, extending a hand. Appreciate you coming. Can't say I've had this request before. She shook his hand. You're sure he asked for me? As clear as day, said your name twice, spelled it out even. Marissa shifted uncomfortably. I don't understand. I've had no dealings with him. Davis studied her for a moment, like he could sense the unanswered questions rattling around inside her. Sometimes, he said, the condemned, they fixate on something from their past. Could be unfinished business, could be guilt, could be nothing at all. Nothing about Lucas Kane felt like nothing at all. The warden led her down a series of corridors, each door clanging shut behind them. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, washing everything in a pale, sickly glow. Finally, they reached a small visitation room, 2 chairs, a steel table bolted to the floor, a camera in the corner. He'll be brought in shortly, Davis said. Then he paused. You don't have to do this, officer. You can walk out now. We'll tell him you declined. Marissa thought about that. Thought about the name that had lingered in her memory for over a decade. Thought about the face of the boy she once encountered, and how it haunted her more than any mugshot she'd seen in her career. I'll stay, she said. The warden gave a curt nod and left. Moments later, the door opened again. 2 guards escorted Lucas Kane into the room. Marissa's breath caught. He wasn't 19 anymore. He was 31 now, with lines etched around his eyes, a beard speckled with gray, and a heaviness in the way he moved. His orange jumpsuit hung loosely on his wiry frame. But his eyes, those dark, haunted eyes, were the same. He sat down across from her. For a long moment, he didn't speak. He just looked at her, like he was searching for something in her face. You came. he said finally, his voice low, rough like gravel. Marissa crossed her arms. You asked for me. Why? A small, almost imperceptible smile tugged at his lips. Because you're the only cop who ever treated me like a human being. The words hit her like a punch. The memory rushed back. She had been a rookie, patrolling a rough neighborhood on the east side of Austin. She'd been called to a domestic disturbance, nothing unusual, just another night. When she arrived, there had been shouting, broken glass. A terrified little boy crouching on the porch. The boy was Lucas. She remembered kneeling down, offering him a bottle of water from her cruiser, telling him it would be okay. She remembered driving him to a foster home later that night after his mother was taken into custody for drugs. It had been 15 years ago. She hadn't thought of it in years. But clearly, he had Marissa swallowed. You remember that? I never forgot, he said simply. That night. I thought the whole world hated me. You didn't. You treated me like I mattered. Silence stretched between them. Marissa shifted in her seat. Why call me now, Lucas? What do you want? From me? His eyes glistened, but his voice was steady. My last wish. She exhaled sharply. What is it? He leaned forward, lowering his voice like it was a secret meant only for her. I want you to take me back. To where it all started. Just once. Before they put that needle in me. Marissa blinked. Back where? The old house. The one I grew up in, on Navarro Street. Her stomach turned. That place is condemned. Boarded up for years. I know, he said. But it's all I've got left. I want to see it, one more time with you. She stared at him, unable to form words. This was insane. Prisoners didn't just get escorted out into the world before execution. Requests were usually a meal, a song, a prayer. Not this. I can't grant that, she said finally. Maybe you can't, Lucas said softly. But you asked why I wanted you here. That's the truth. Marissa leaned back, running a hand over her face. You don't get it. This isn't up to me. Then talk to the warden, Lucas pressed. Please, it doesn't have to be long. Just 1 hour. I'll go in chains with guards, whatever. Just don't let me die without seeing where I came from. Without facing it. His eyes locked onto hers, and for a brief, terrifying second, she saw not the condemned man, not the murderer the news had branded him, but the boy on that porch years ago. The boy who had once clung to her sleeve as if she were the only steady thing in his collapsing world. She tore her gaze away. This isn't normal. Lucas, she muttered. Neither is dying at 31, he replied. The guards shifted behind him, glancing impatiently at the clock. Time was short. Marissa stood abruptly. I'll talk to Davis. Lucas's voice followed her as she headed for the door. Thank you, even if it's a no thank you. The warden wasn't pleased. You realize the precedent this sets, Davis said, pacing his office. We've never allowed something like this. It's security risk, liability risk hell. It's a PR nightmare waiting to happen. I get that, Marissa said, but it's his last wish. He's not asking for freedom, just closure. Davis stopped pacing and looked at her. Why you? Why is he dragging you into this? She hesitated. I met him once, years ago, before all this. Maybe I was kind to him when others weren't. The warden studied her a moment longer, then sighed. You understand, if this goes sideways, it's on your shoulders. You're the one vouching for him. I know, Marissa said quietly. For a long time, Davis said nothing. Then he picked up the phone, dialed a number, and muttered, Get me the Department of Corrections. 2 days later, under the heavy watch of armed guards, Lucas Kane was shackled and placed in the back of a transport van. Marissa rode in the front seat beside the driver, the whole time questioning whether she'd just made the worst decision of her career. The drive was short. Navarro Street hadn't changed much, still lined with sagging porches, broken windows, yards littered with rusted cars. Poverty clung to it like an unshakable disease. The van pulled up to a crumbling, boarded-up house. Lucas stared out the window, his face unreadable. When the guards opened the door and helped him out, Marissa was already standing there, the heat pressing down like a weight. Lucas's chains clinked with every step as he shuffled forward, his gaze fixed on the house. "This is it," he whispered. The guards fanned out, weapons at the ready. Neighbors peeked through curtains. A dog barked somewhere down the block. Marissa's heart thudded in her chest as she followed him up the weed-choked path. Lucas stopped at the door. The wood was splintered, graffiti scrawled across it. He raised his cuffed hands almost reverently and touched the faded paint. For a moment, everything was still. The heat, the silence, the weight of years pressing down on both of them. "This is where it started," Lucas said softly. "And where it ended." Marissa swallowed hard, 1,000 unspoken questions pressing at her lips. But before she could speak, Lucas turned his head toward her, eyes shining with something she couldn't name, and said, "Officer Cole, there's something I need to tell you. Something I've kept buried all these years." And in that moment, with the sun blazing down and a condemned man standing before his childhood home in chains, Marissa realized this wasn't just about a last wish. It was about a truth that could change everything. The cicadas screamed in the oppressive Texas heat, and for a heartbeat, it felt like the entire street had gone silent waiting for whatever Lucas Kane was about to say. Marissa shifted uneasily, her hand brushing the butt of her holstered sidearm. Out of instinct. Not because she thought he'd lunge at her. His wrists and ankles were shackled, and 3 armed guards had their rifles slung across their chests, but because there was a raw, unnerving electricity in his voice. "What is it?" she asked, steady but low, like a cop trained to tread carefully. Lucas's dark eyes flicked up toward the guards, then back to her. "Not here, inside, please." The guards exchanged skeptical glances. One of them, a broad-shouldered veteran with a buzz cut, muttered, "This is insane. We're already pushing policy by bringing him here. Now you want him inside?" Marissa didn't answer right away. She studied Lucas, the way his breath hitched when he stared at the boarded windows, the tremor in his chained hands. It wasn't bravado. It was something deeper. Finally, she looked at the guard. "I'll take responsibility. Let him in." The guard shook his head. "Ma'am, that's an order," she snapped. Her voice had the steel of a cop who'd pulled rank before. Reluctantly, the men moved aside, and one of them pried the warped door open with a crowbar. The smell hit instantly: mildew, dust, and the faint metallic tang of old rust. Lucas stepped inside, his chains clinking like hollow echoes in the silence. Marissa followed. The house was a carcass of what it once was. The walls were rotted through, graffiti sprawled across faded wallpaper, and the floorboards creaked with every step. A broken ceiling fan dangled dangerously by one wire. Lucas moved. Slowly, as if each corner pulled memories out of him. He stopped in the living room and stared at a patch of wall where the plaster had crumbled away. "That was where Mom threw the plate," he murmured. "I was 8. It shattered right there. Cut my arm." He touched a faint scar running along his forearm. Funny how pain can stay with you longer than love. Marissa watched him closely, her chest tightening. She'd seen hundreds of crime scenes, but this felt different, like the house itself was holding its breath, listening. Lucas turned suddenly, eyes boring into hers. "I didn't kill them, Officer Cole." The words froze the air between them. Marissa blinked. "What did you just say?" "I didn't kill the clerk and the boy," Lucas said, his voice firm, almost defiant. "I've said it before, but no one believed me. Not the jury, not the public. Not even my lawyer." Her stomach dropped. Every cop had heard prisoners claim innocence. It was practically a cliché. But there was something in the way he said it, steady, not desperate, that made her hesitate. "Lucas," she said carefully, "the evidence, was planted. He interrupted. The guards behind them shifted uncomfortably, one muttering under his breath, "Here we go again." But Lucas didn't falter. He gestured toward the crumbling stairs. "Up there. My brother's room. He was the one with the gun that night. He pulled the trigger, not me." Marissa's pulse quickened. "Your brother?" "Ethan," Lucas said, almost whispering. "He was older, meaner. I was 19, dumb, trying to keep up with him. He dragged me into that robbery, but when it went bad, when the shots rang out, it was his finger on the trigger, not mine. But he ran. He left me holding the bag." The room tilted for Marissa, as if the weight of his words pressed the air out of it. "Lucas," she said slowly, "if this is true, why didn't you say anything at trial?" His jaw tightened. "Because I was scared. Because Ethan promised. If I opened my mouth, he'd hurt Mom. And by the time I realized keeping quiet had sealed my fate, it was too late." Marissa felt her throat go dry. The kid on the porch all those years ago, clutching her sleeve, begging for safety. She saw him again now, standing in the ruins of his past. The guards exchanged skeptical looks. One scoffed. "Classic. Blame the brother who ain't here to defend himself." But Marissa couldn't shake it. The conviction in his tone. The unflinching way he stared her down. It didn't sound like a con's last-ditch plea. It sounded like truth. She stepped closer. "Where's Ethan now?" Lucas's eyes darkened. "Dead. Overdose. 3 years after my trial." "Dead, no way." To confirm or deny, Marissa pressed. "And you're telling me this now after all these years?" "Because I wanted you to hear it," Lucas said simply. "The one cop who treated me like I wasn't trash. I don't care if the world believes me, but I needed you to know." Her chest ached in a way she hadn't expected. Before she could answer, the guard with the buzz cut cleared his throat sharply. "Time's up, we're moving him back." Lucas didn't protest. He let them steer him toward the door. But just before stepping out into the blinding sun again, he glanced over his shoulder at Marissa, and in that fleeting look, she saw something she couldn't ignore, a plea. That night, back in her apartment, Marissa couldn't sleep. She sat at her kitchen table, a glass of whiskey untouched in front of her, staring at the case file she'd pulled from the archive earlier. That evening, she'd used every ounce of goodwill she had in the department to get access. The evidence against Lucas had seemed airtight back then. His fingerprints on the cash register, gunpowder residue on his jacket, witnesses placing him near the store. But as Marissa flipped through the documents now, her mind kept circling back to his words in that ruined house. It was Ethan. Fingerprints, gunpowder, witnesses, all things that could be manipulated, especially if the cops at the time wanted a conviction fast. She rubbed her temples, frustration mounting. She'd seen rushed investigations before. Seen the system choose the easy answer instead of the right one. And if Lucas was telling the truth, then the state of Texas was about to execute an innocent man. The thought made her stomach churn. The next day, Marissa returned to the prison under the guise of a routine check-in. Lucas was sitting in the visitation room again, his wrists chained to the table. "You came back," he said, a faint spark in his eyes. "I looked at your file," Marissa said, sliding into the chair opposite him. "If you want me to believe you're gonna have to give me more. Details only you would know." Lucas leaned forward. "The gun. They never found it, did they?" "That's because Ethan tossed it in the drainage ditch behind Navarro Street, half a mile from the house. Cops never searched there. They only cared about pinning it on me." Marissa's pulse jumped. She remembered the case notes. The murder weapon had never been recovered, and the clerk, Lucas added. His name was George Whitaker. He wore a silver chain with a cross. My brother ripped it off him after the shooting. He said it was a trophy. He kept it in a shoebox under his bed. I swear to you, it was still there when the cops came, but somehow no one ever mentioned it in evidence. Marissa's blood ran cold. The detail about the necklace, she'd seen the crime scene photos, noticed the faint chain marks on the victim's neck, but there had been no mention of a necklace in the evidence logs. It wasn't proof. But it was enough to plant doubt. Why? Didn't you tell your lawyer this? She pressed. Lucas shook his head. You think my public defender cared? He met me twice before the trial. Told me to take a plea. I didn't. And then the DA painted me as a monster, and the jury believed it. Marissa leaned back, her heart pounding. If he was lying, he was damn good at it. But if he wasn't... The guards rapped on the door. Time was up. Lucas's eyes locked on hers. You're the only one who can stop them, Marissa. Don't let them kill me for something I didn't do. Over the next 48 hours, Marissa became a woman possessed. She called in favors from old contacts, combed through evidence logs, even drove to Navarro Street at midnight to shine a flashlight into the storm drains. Nothing. Every lead felt like smoke slipping through her fingers. By the third night, she was exhausted, hollow-eyed, and ready to admit defeat. She sat slumped on her couch, staring at the clock. Execution was less than a week away. Her phone buzzed. A text from an old detective she'd reached out to. You might want to check property. Room number 3. Some of Kane's evidence was boxed wrong. Saw it years back, never sat right with me. Marissa's heart leapt. The next morning, she marched into the evidence warehouse under official pretense. Rows of boxes stretched to the ceiling, labeled and numbered like a graveyard of forgotten truths. In property room number 3, she found it. A mislabeled box shoved on the wrong shelf. Inside, wrapped in a stained brown paper bag, was a silver chain with a small, tarnished cross. The tag read, Recovered, 2009, Navarro residence. Her hands trembled. Lucas had been telling the truth, and if this had been buried intentionally or not, it meant his conviction could be a lie built on omission. She sank against the shelves, the weight of it slamming into her chest. The state was about to execute a man who might not be guilty. She had less than 5 days to prove it. That evening, Marissa went back to the prison. She didn't care about protocol anymore. She needed him to know. Lucas sat across from her, his expression weary but curious. She placed the necklace on the table between them. His eyes widened, and for the first time since she'd seen him, his composure cracked. You found it, he whispered. Marissa leaned in. I don't know how much this proves, but it's real. And it was hidden. If we can get this to a lawyer, someone who'll actually fight for you, maybe, Lucas's voice shook, maybe I don't have to die. The guards outside shifted, eyeing them suspiciously, but Marissa didn't care. She'd crossed the line already. You're not out of the woods, she warned. This is Texas. Appeals don't stop for just anything. We need more.